Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. Thank you. It was November 1944, and I had been stationed on Oahu for just under 3 months when the first body was found. The official report said it was a training accident, a young private caught in a rock slide during night maneuvers in the Koʻolau Range. But we all knew that was a lie. His chest had been crushed, yes, but not by falling rock. Not by anything we could explain. His weapon was bent, like someone had folded steel with their bare hands. That night, the officers ordered silence. We were told to sign a statement, word for word, swearing the death was accidental. No questions, no deviations. I remember the sergeant's eyes when he made us repeat it cold, almost frightened, like even he didn't believe a word of it. I lay awake in the barracks listening to the jungle. The valley outside seemed alive, shifting, as if something massive was moving just beyond the tree line. The crickets would stop all at once, and that silence would press into my chest like a weight. Then came the smell. Sharp, musky, like wet animal fur and rotting earth. No one admitted they noticed it, but I saw the way men coughed into their sleeves or shifted uncomfortably when the wind changed. The locals, the few who dared speak to us, called the place Kahelelani the Lost Valley. They warned us not to go there after dark, but the army didn't care about warnings. Orders were orders. 2 weeks later, another soldier vanished. He was last seen standing guard at dusk near the ridge. When they found his rifle, the stock was splintered, the barrel twisted. No blood, no body, no footprints leading away. Just the smell. That was when the whispers began. Not about the Japanese, not about saboteurs or enemy scouts. No, the men whispered a single word they were afraid to say out loud. Bigfoot. I would have laughed, but I'd seen the twisted steel myself. I'd heard the silence in the trees, and I would never forget the scream that echoed through the valley the next night. A sound so deep and ragged, it didn't belong to any man I'd ever known. The official reports buried it. The brass told us we'd imagine things. But I knew better. I saw it. And what I saw in that valley, what we all saw, has haunted me for 80 years. But if you're listening now, you deserve to hear the truth. The truth about the night Hawaii soldiers fought Bigfoot, and about why none of us were ever supposed to talk about it again. The first time I heard its footsteps, I thought it was thunder. But then the ground shook, and I realized it was coming straight for us. They told us we were stationed in paradise. Palm trees, white sand, and warm breezes. That was the story sold to us when we shipped out of San Francisco in the late summer of 1944. The truth was far different. Oahu was a fortress. Barbed wires stretched along the beaches, pillboxes dotted the coastline, and the mountains loomed like watchful gods behind us. After Pearl Harbor, the island had transformed into a nervous hive of soldiers and sailors, always expecting another attack. But by the time I arrived, Japan was pulling back, and the war was shifting westward. Still, command kept us sharp with endless patrols, drills, and the kind of assignments that never made sense until you thought about what they weren't telling you. Our Unit C Company, 298th Infantry Regiment, was officially tasked with terrain familiarization in the Koʻolau Range. That was the phrasing on the papers. In reality, it meant long, miserable treks through steep jungle ravines and valleys where the sun barely touched the ground. The air pressed heavy, mud sucking at every step, the jungle itself trying to hold us back. Mosquitoes feasted on us. Leeches found their way into socks and undershirts. Men cursed, scratched, and laughed in the way soldiers do when misery becomes routine. But beneath the banter, there was something else. A tension that grew the deeper we pushed into that wilderness. The first time we were led into Kahelelani Valley, no one said the name. Not the officers, not the local guides the Army sometimes hired, not even the Hawaiians who worked on the supply runs. It was just the valley. It stretched out like a scar between two ridges, draped in mist, choked with ferns taller than a man. The canopy blotted out the sky, so it always felt like dusk down there, no matter the time of day. And it was quiet, too quiet. You didn't hear the constant bird chatter or insect hum you'd expect, just the slow drip of water and the crunch of boots on the trail. On our first patrol inside, one of the guys, Private Collins, tried to lighten the mood. "Jungle's dead," he muttered. "Even the damn birds know better than to come here." We laughed, but no one disagreed. That night when we camped along the stream, I noticed something strange. The trees near our position bore scars long, vertical scratches carved deep into the bark, higher than a man could reach. Some of them were wide, as if done by fingers thicker than a broom handle. I mentioned it to Sergeant Hale, but he shut me down with a glare. "Stay sharp, keep your mouth shut," he said. "Don't spook the men with ghost stories." We were a mixed bunch. Some locals from the islands, others from the mainland like me. Farm boys, factory hands, kids who'd never been more than 50 miles from home. War has a way of throwing strangers together and making them brothers, whether you like it or not. There was Ramirez, who always carried a deck of cards and swore he could beat anyone at poker, even though he lost half his pay each month. O'Reilly, who sang old Irish songs under his breath during night marches, driving us all crazy but somehow keeping our spirits alive. And then there was Murphy, big, stubborn, and reckless. The kind of guy who'd climb a ridge just to see if he could. We joked, fought, and watched each other's backs. But after the second accident in the valley, the laughter faded. The soldier who vanished, his name was Private Jensen, was quiet, dependable, the sort who never complained. He'd been assigned guard duty along the ridge near camp. The last anyone saw, he was leaning on his rifle, squinting into the tree line as dusk settled in. When we went to relieve him, he was gone. His rifle lay broken across the roots of a banyan tree. The stock snapped clean, the barrel twisted into a corkscrew. I don't care how strong you are, no human could do that with bare hands. We searched all night with lanterns and dogs, nothing. No tracks, no drag marks, no blood. Just that smell, heavy, sour, like wet fur and rot. When we reported back, command didn't hesitate. Lost in the terrain, they wrote. Presumed dead. We knew better. The morning after Jensen disappeared, Captain Miller gathered us. He was a career man, stiff as a board, always polished boots even in the mud. His jaw was tight, his eyes colder than usual. "You will not speak of this," he said. "Not in letters, not to each other, not to anyone." The Army's statement is clear. Jensen was lost in a training mishap. That is the truth you will remember. Murphy muttered something under his breath, and Miller's eyes cut through him like bayonets. "I will court-martial any man who spreads rumors," Miller continued. "Do you understand?" We all nodded, but none of us believed him. A week later, I found myself on supply duty in a small village on the windward side. An old Hawaiian man helped load crates into the truck. He kept glancing at the valley ridge in the distance, his lips pressed tight. Finally, he leaned closer and whispered, "The old ones still walk there. You soldiers should not go." I asked him what he meant, but he shook his head and spat on the ground, like even speaking the words was dangerous. When I pressed, he said just one thing: not man, not animal, something in between. Then he walked away, leaving me with a chill that the humid air couldn't shake. The men started sleeping lighter, rifles closer at hand. At night, we heard things: heavy movements in the brush, branches cracking, once a low growl that carried through camp and froze every man in his tracks. "Wild pigs," Hale insisted, but no pig makes a sound that deep, that long. One evening, while cleaning his rifle, Ramirez muttered, "If it's pigs, why don't we see them? Why don't we find their tracks?" Nobody answered. One night, rummaging through supply papers, I found a folded map tucked inside a weathered file. It was marked with red ink, outlining a section of the valley we'd never been assigned to patrol. Across it, in block letters, someone had scrawled, "Restricted, do not enter." When I showed it to Murphy, he whistled low. "Looks like they're keeping secrets from us." We decided to keep it quiet, but it gnawed at me. What was the Army hiding in that stretch of jungle? By December, the valley had a reputation. Men volunteered for anything else just to avoid patrols inside it. Even Hale, who never flinched at anything, started carrying extra ammunition. I'll never forget the night O'Reilly woke us all with a scream. He'd been on watch staring into the trees when he swore he saw two eyes glowing, amber, the size of fists. He fired 3 rounds before anyone could stop him. When we searched, nothing was there, just the smell again. The captain dismissed it as nerves. But we knew O'Reilly wasn't the kind to spook easily. That map, the warnings, the vanishings they dug into me, I couldn't let it go. Every time I stepped into Kahelelani, I felt the weight of something watching. The scars on the trees, the silence in the canopy, the broken weapons, it all pointed to something we weren't supposed to see. And the more Command told us to forget, the more I wanted answers. I started keeping notes in a small journal, hidden beneath my kit. Every patrol, every sound, every unexplained sign, I wrote it down. Not for the Army, not for anyone else. For me, because deep down, I knew we were walking blind into something far larger, far stranger than any enemy across the ocean. And then, just days before Christmas, we got new orders. Not patrols, not training, a direct mission straight into the restricted zone on that map. Whatever the Army was hiding, they were about to send us right into the heart of it, and that's when the valley showed us what lived there. Something no rifle, no training, no soldier was prepared to face. We got the orders on a damp morning, the kind where the air sat heavy in your lungs. Hale read them out in that flat voice of his, but I could see something different in his eyes. Worry, maybe even fear. The orders were short. We were to march into the interior of Kahelelani Valley, past the ridge we usually stopped at, and hold position overnight. No reason given, no explanation why the restricted zone was suddenly open to us. Just orders. The men exchanged glances. Nobody said it out loud, but we all remembered that map, the section marked in red. Murphy leaned close and whispered, "Guess they're done pretending." We set out before noon, packs loaded heavier than usual, extra ammo, rations, even flares. It was as if Command expected trouble, but wasn't willing to tell us what kind. The trail narrowed quickly, forcing us into single file, boots slipping in the mud, sweat dripping down our backs. The higher we climbed, the quieter it got. Even the usual jungle noises seemed to fade. By late afternoon, the ridge opened up to a hollow that looked untouched by men. Mist curled between the trees, thick enough to blur shapes and shadows. The air smelled wrong, stronger now. Wet fur, rot, something sour that burned in the nose. We made camp near a stream. Nobody wanted to talk much. Ramirez shuffled his cards but didn't deal. O'Reilly sat with his rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the tree line. I tried to write a few notes in my journal, but the damp had already smeared the pages. When night came, the valley closed in on us. The mist thickened, rolling through camp until it felt like we were breathing fog instead of air. The fire wouldn't stay lit. It hissed and sputtered like the wood itself was damp from the inside. Sometime past midnight, I heard it. A thud, slow, heavy, deliberate. The kind of step that makes the ground give a little under you. I thought at first it was my imagination, but then it came again. Thud, thud. Like someone walking just beyond the line of sight. I gripped my rifle and scanned the dark. The mist shifted, and for a moment I swore I saw a shape between the trees. Taller than any man, broad shoulders, a head that seemed to brush the low branches. The figure stood still, watching. Then the crickets stopped. Dead silence. Not even the stream made a sound. My skin crawled. "Did you hear that?" Ramirez whispered from his post. Before I could answer, something whistled through the air and struck the ground beside him. A rock, smooth, heavy, thrown with force enough to bury itself in the mud. Ramirez leapt back. "Jesus Christ, someone's out there." The camp snapped awake. Rifles came up, fingers on triggers, eyes wide. But the captain barked out, "Hold your fire!" His voice was sharp, almost desperate. "No shooting unless I give the order." We waited, rifles trembling in our hands. Another rock came, then another. One bounced off a pack, another slammed against a tree with a crack that echoed like gunfire. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The mist swirled, the silence hung heavy, and the figure I thought I'd seen was gone. The captain ordered double guard that night. Nobody slept. By dawn, the mist lifted enough to see the damage. Trees scarred with gouges, fresh and deep. A trail of footprints in the mud by the stream, each one twice the size of a man's boot. Wide, flat, with clear impressions of toes. Hale bent over them, tracing one with his hand. His face went pale. "Animals don't walk upright," Murphy muttered. "And animals sure as hell don't throw rocks." No one argued. We moved deeper that day, following orders none of us trusted. The ground grew steeper, roots twisting like ropes, vines thick as arms. The smell grew stronger, clinging to us, seeping into our clothes. Every so often we'd find more prints, always alongside us, never ahead. It was as if whatever it was wanted us to know we were being followed. At dusk we reached a clearing, trees torn out by the roots, soil churned like something massive had fought its way through. In the center stood a tree split clean in half, fibers shredded, sap still bleeding down its trunk. Ramirez spat. "Tell me that's normal." The captain ordered us to set up camp there, in the middle of the clearing. We built a perimeter, rifles at the ready. Nobody liked it. Wide open ground, nothing but shadows in the tree line. That night was worse. The sounds came closer. Heavy breathing, branches snapping, a low rumble that vibrated in my chest. Once, something brushed against the perimeter wire, rattling the cans we strung as alarms. We opened fire that time. Muzzle flashes lit the mist, rounds cracking into the dark. When the smoke cleared, the tree line was still. But in the mud, where the wire had been pressed down, we found a single print. Bigger than the others. Deeper. Like it had stood its ground against gunfire and never moved. By morning, morale was shattered. O'Reilly muttered prayers under his breath. Ramirez refused to shuffle his cards. Even Murphy kept quiet, his bravado gone. We marched again, pushing toward the heart of the restricted zone. That was when we found the remains. A camp abandoned. Not ours, not any I'd seen. Tents torn apart, canvas shredded like paper, crates smashed open, supplies scattered, and blood. Dark stains soaked into the earth, dried long ago. No bodies, but signs of a struggle. Among the wreckage, we found gear stamped with U.S. Army markings, dog tags, weapons bent and broken the same way as Jensen's rifle. Captain Miller didn't say a word. He just gathered the tags, shoved them into his pocket, and ordered us forward. His jaw clenched, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat awake, journal in hand, listening to the jungle breathe around us. Every now and then, I'd hear it, a step, a crack, a low growl. Always near, never seen. When I closed my eyes, I saw the prints, the broken camp, the twisted rifles, and I knew deep down we weren't on a patrol. We weren't training. We were bait. The Army knew something was in this valley, and they'd sent us straight into its hunting ground. And then, just before dawn, we heard it. Not a growl, not a step, a scream. It started low, then rose higher, tearing through the valley like a blade. Not human, not animal, something in between. It shook the trees, rattled the ground, and froze every man in his tracks. When it finally stopped, the silence that followed was worse than the scream itself, because we knew it was close, too close, and it wasn't afraid of us. The next time it showed itself, none of us would mistake it for shadows anymore. The scream hung in our heads long after the echoes died. None of us spoke. None of us dared move. Even the captain looked shaken, though he tried not to show it. Hale finally broke the silence, his voice low. "Everyone stays put. Eyes out. No one leaves the line." But no order in the world could steady our nerves after hearing that sound. It wasn't human, but it wasn't just animal either. It carried something, thinking, like a warning, like it knew we were there and wanted us to know. The hours before dawn crawled. My hands were damp on my rifle. Every shadow felt alive. I caught myself staring at the tree line, waiting for something to step out. When morning finally came, none of us had slept. We moved slow, tired, nerves raw. The captain said we'd push deeper, but the men exchanged looks. Nobody wanted to. I could feel it, the thin line between obedience and outright refusal. But we marched. By mid-afternoon, the trail bent toward a ravine where the trees grew taller, their roots twisting over one another like veins. Mist pooled thick in the hollow. The smell was stronger there, almost choking. Ramirez pulled a rag over his mouth. "Smells like something died," he muttered. O'Reilly gagged. "Or something's been living here too long." We set up along the ridge overlooking the ravine. Hale and I went down to scout. That's when I saw it. Not the creature. Not yet. Bones, scattered near the water's edge, half buried in mud. Human bones, no question. A boot still clung to one foot, the leather torn and chewed. The skull lay cracked open, as if split with a hammer. I froze. Hale crouched beside me, staring, his jaw clenched tight. "Back up the ridge," he said quietly. "Now!" We climbed fast, hearts pounding. The others saw our faces and knew. Nobody asked. The captain inspected the bones himself. His expression never changed, but his hands trembled when he lit a cigarette. He didn't say a word about what we'd found. He just ordered us further in. That was when the men started whispering. "They're sending us in to die," Murphy growled. "We're not here for patrols. We're here because command knows what's out here." No one argued. Deep down, we all believed it. That night it came closer. We had tripwires strung with cans, rifles at the ready, fires burning high. The mist rolled in again, swallowing the light. The jungle went dead silent. Then came the footsteps. Slow at first, heavy, one after another. They circled us, just outside the glow of the fire. The men gripped their rifles, eyes darting, breaths held. The cans rattled. Something massive brushed the wire. I raised my rifle and then I saw it. For the first time, clear as day. It stepped into the firelight, just at the edge. Tall, at least 8 feet. Shoulders broad, chest thick with dark hair matted and damp. Arms long, hands hanging low, fingers like clubs. Its face, God help me, its face was the worst part. Not animal, not man. Both. Deep-set eyes glowed faint amber in the firelight. Its nose broad, lips curled back to reveal teeth too large, too square. Its skin, where the hair thinned, was grayish, scarred, weathered. It just stood there, watching. Ramirez whispered, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph." The captain hissed, "Hold your fire!" But Murphy panicked. He squeezed off a round. The crack shattered the silence. The bullet struck the thing's shoulder, but instead of dropping, it roared. A sound that shook my chest and rattled my teeth. It moved, fast. Too fast for something that size. In 2 strides, it hit the perimeter, grabbed a tree trunk thicker than my waist, and tore it from the ground like it was nothing. We opened fire. The clearing lit up with muzzle flashes. Rounds slammed into its chest, shoulders, legs. It staggered, but it didn't fall. It swung the tree like a bat, smashing a tent flat, sending gear flying. O'Reilly screamed as the trunk clipped him, tossing him 10 feet. "Fall back! Fall back!" the captain shouted. We scrambled up the ridge, firing as we ran. The thing roared again, then melted back into the mist, vanishing between the trees as fast as it had come. When silence returned, the camp was wrecked. Gear scattered, one tent flattened, O'Reilly bleeding from a broken arm. None of us spoke. We'd all seen it. No more whispers, no more doubts. It was real, flesh and blood, and bullets barely slowed it down. The captain gathered us. His face was gray, sweat dripping down his brow. "You tell no one about this," he said. His voice shook, but he forced it steady. "What happened here tonight will not be reported as you saw it." "Do you understand?" Murphy exploded. "Are you out of your mind? That thing tore through us like paper. You expect us to." "Shut your mouth, Private," the captain barked. "You'll follow orders or you'll hang for insubordination." The men stared at him, disbelief plain on every face. But no one pushed further. We were too shaken, too tired, too scared. Later, when most tried to sleep, Murphy pulled me aside. His eyes were wild, but his voice steady. They knew. They knew this thing was here. That's why they marked the map. That's why they sent us in. We're not here to train. We're here to see if it can be killed. I didn't answer because he was right. Deep down, I already knew it. The next day, we tried to move out, but the valley wasn't letting us go. The trails twisted. Landmarks vanished in the mist. No matter how we marched, we ended up circling back to the clearing. It was like the place was alive, like it was leading us where it wanted. By evening, supplies were low, nerves were shot, and the men were near breaking. Hale pulled me aside, voice barely above a whisper. "We won't last long like this. Not with that thing stalking us." I nodded, though I had no answer. That night it returned. Not one, two. We saw them from the ridge, massive shapes moving through the mist, shoulders brushing trees aside, the same eyes glowing faint in the dark. Ramirez swore under his breath. O'Reilly crossed himself with his good arm. We didn't fire. We didn't move. We just watched as they circled below us, silent, patient. And that's when I realized the truth. We weren't hunting them. They were hunting us. And by the time we understood that, it was already too late. The night we realized there were two of them, everything changed. Before then, we thought maybe, just maybe, we could fight back, that numbers and rifles gave us some chance. But seeing both shapes moving through the mist, each massive, each silent, we understood the truth. We weren't an army in that valley. We were prey. No one slept. We sat in the dark, rifles in our hands, eyes burning from strain. The jungle pressed closer, mist curling around the trees like smoke from a fire. Every so often, I'd catch the faint glow of eyes between the branches, watching, waiting. By dawn, nerves were shredded raw. Murphy looked like a man ready to snap, his jaw clenched, eyes bloodshot, hands twitching around his rifle. "We can't sit here," he muttered. "We have to move. Find higher ground, or get the hell out." The captain ignored him, studying his map, though I could tell he wasn't really reading it. The map was useless. The valley bent directions like a trick of the mind. Wherever we tried to go, we ended up circling back. It was like the land itself was leading us in circles. We set out anyway, packs light, weapons loaded. The jungle was thick, each step slow and heavy, sweat stinging our eyes. The air stank of that musky rot. Every time I thought the smell faded, it returned stronger, as if drifting from all sides at once. By midday, we heard them again. Branches cracking, low rumbles, footsteps pacing us through the trees. 2 o'clock, Ramirez whispered, pointing. I saw the shape then, broad shoulders sliding between the trunks, not rushing us, not hiding either, just keeping pace. On the opposite side, another shadow moved. We were boxed in. The captain called a halt. His voice was firm, but the edge of fear slipped through. Stay tight, eyes sharp. We formed a circle, rifles out. For a moment, the jungle fell still. My heart hammered so loud it drowned the silence. Then the scream tore through the air. It wasn't like the one before. This was closer, sharper, filled with rage. The ground shook as one of them charged. Trees splintered as the first creature burst into the clearing. It swung a fallen branch thicker than a man's torso, smashing into our line. 2 men went flying, gear scattering across the mud. We opened fire. The clearing lit up with muzzle flashes, the air thick with the roar of gunfire. Bullets ripped into its chest, arms, shoulders. It staggered but kept moving, roaring so loud it rattled the bones in my chest. The second one came from behind. Out of the trees, fast as a bull, it barreled into O'Reilly, snatching him up like a doll. His scream was cut short as it disappeared into the jungle, carrying him in one arm. Jesus Christ, Ramirez shouted, firing wild into the trees. Hold the line, Hale bellowed, dragging one of the injured men back. I dropped to a knee, sighting down my rifle, and fired 3 rounds straight into the first creature's chest. It barely flinched. Blood sprayed, dark and thick, but the thing didn't fall. It swung again, tearing through our line, scattering us like children. Murphy charged. Bayonet fixed, he roared like a madman and plunged forward. The blade struck flesh, sinking deep into the creature's side. For a heartbeat, hope surged. Then the thing grabbed him, lifted him clean off the ground. I'll never forget Murphy's face. Teeth bared, eyes wide, fighting even as it squeezed. Then came the sound of bones snapping. We fired everything we had. Rifles, pistols, even flares. The air burned with smoke and gunpowder, but the giants didn't fall. One finally staggered back, wounded bad enough to limp into the trees. The other roared once more and vanished, dragging Murphy's broken body with it. Silence slammed down. Smoke hung in the air. The clearing was a ruin. Gear scattered, men down, blood soaking into the mud. We counted quickly. O'Reilly gone, Murphy gone. 2 more dead, bodies broken beyond recognition. 3 wounded bad enough they could barely move. The captain stood in the wreckage, face ashen, jaw tight. He didn't rage. He didn't curse. He just said one thing. We hold here. The men stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Ramirez snapped first. "Hold here! Are you insane? They're tearing us apart." The captain's eyes flicked sharp. "That's an order, Private." "No, sir. Not this time," Ramirez spat. You knew. You knew these things were here. You led us straight into them." The silence was heavier than the mist. The captain didn't deny it. Hale stepped forward, voice low. "Sir, is that true?" The captain looked at him, then at all of us. For the first time, I saw it, the truth in his eyes. "This mission was classified," he said. "You weren't brought here to train. You were brought here to test engagement, to see if they could be killed." The words hit harder than any roar. My stomach turned. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were bait, expendable. Ramirez cursed, shaking his head. "We're dead men walking." Before anyone could answer, the wire rattled again. The cans clattered. They were back. The first hit came fast. A rock the size of a helmet slammed into camp, shattering against a crate. Then another. Then branches snapped as the trees shook. "They're circling us," Hale said, voice tight. The captain barked orders, but panic was already spreading. Men fired blind into the trees. The mist swallowed the muzzle flashes, leaving only the echo of gunfire. Then the attack came full force. The first creature burst through the line, grabbing a man and hurling him against a tree with such force his body broke like glass. The second came from behind, swinging a log, smashing into two men at once. Chaos, screams, gunfire, blood. I fired until my rifle clicked empty, then slammed another clip in, hands shaking. Bullets ripped into the giant's chest. It bellowed, staggering but not falling. Hale grabbed a grenade, yanked the pin, and hurled it. The blast lit the clearing, dirt and smoke raining down. When it cleared, one of the creatures lay crumpled, chest torn open, blood steaming in the air. For a moment, hope flared. We'd killed it. It could be killed. But then the other roared, louder, angrier, a sound filled with grief and rage. It grabbed the dead one's body, bellowed again, and charged. It hit the captain first. One swing, and he was gone, body broken. It tore through the rest of us like a storm. I don't remember how I survived. I remember running, lungs burning, crashing through vines and roots. I remember Hale dragging me by the collar, shouting in my ear to move, move, move. Behind us, the roars shook the valley. When we finally collapsed against a ridge, gasping for air, only a handful of us remained. Hale, Ramirez, two others, both wounded. The jungle was silent again, except for our ragged breaths. We'd killed one, but the other still lived, and it wasn't going to stop. I stared at the men, blood on my hands, ears still ringing. My chest heaved, and in that moment, the truth hit me harder than any blow. The army never expected us to come back. Not all of us. Maybe not any of us. We weren't fighting a war in that valley. We were covering one up. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure who the real enemy was anymore. The thing stalking us in the jungle, or the men who sent us to face it. We sat on that ridge for what felt like hours, too tired to move, too shaken to speak. The jungle pressed in on us, thick with mist, and every sound made us flinch. The truth was simple. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were survivors, clinging to what little was left. There were 5 of us. Hale, still steady but pale from blood loss at his arm. Ramirez, eyes wild, his rifle shaking in his grip. 2 others, Williams and Kent, both wounded. One with a limp, the other coughing blood into his sleeve. And me, heart pounding, mind running in circles around what I'd just seen. The creature we killed lay somewhere behind us, torn open by grenade fire. But the other one, the one that carried Murphy, the one that tore through our line, it was still out there. And it wasn't going to stop. Hale finally broke the silence. "We can't stay here. Supplies are gone. Ammunition's low. If we sit, it'll finish us." He was right. We all knew it. Ramirez muttered a curse and wiped sweat from his brow. "Then where do we go?" "Every path leads back. It's like this place doesn't want us out." Nobody answered. We moved anyway, dragging ourselves through the trees, following the ridge downward. The ground was slick, roots grabbing at our boots, branches slapping our faces. The mist grew thicker as if the valley itself was closing in on us. Every step, I expected the roar behind us, the crash of trees, the giant hand pulling me into the dark. Hours passed, no sign of pursuit, but no sign of escape either. The valley twisted, familiar landmarks reappearing like a nightmare loop. I swear I saw the same fallen log 3 times. By dusk, we stumbled into another clearing. This one was different, not natural. There were structures, low, rotting huts half hidden by vines, rusted barrels, a broken radio tower leaning at an angle, and in the dirt, buried beneath moss and roots, dog tags scattered like coins. I bent down and picked one up. U.S. Army, name scratched by rust, but the date stamped clear, 1942. 2 years before we were sent in. This wasn't the first mission. Others had been here. Others had died here. Ramirez's voice cracked as he looked around. How many times? How many damn times did they send men here? None of us spoke. We didn't need to. The answer was in the ground around us. Hale found a file case in one of the huts. The papers inside were damp, half-rotted, but I made out fragments. Reports, diagrams, sketches of massive footprints, claw marks, height estimates, words like subhuman and classified threat. Notes that read, subject displays territorial aggression and engagement attempts unsuccessful. My stomach turned. They'd known for years and they kept sending men. The sun dropped, shadows stretching long. Hale said we couldn't stay. But Williams collapsed by the hut, too weak to move. Blood loss had drained him. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Go, just go." We stayed until his breathing stopped. No prayers, no words, just silence. We couldn't even bury him. The ground was too hard and none of us had the strength. Night fell. That was when we heard it again. Not the scream this time. A howl, long, rising, shaking the leaves from the trees. It echoed off the ridges, closer than it should have been. The thing knew where we were. Kent panicked. He bolted into the trees, rifle clutched to his chest, breath ragged. Hale shouted after him, but it was too late. The jungle swallowed him. Seconds later, a scream split the night. High, sharp, cut short, then silence. 3 of us left, Hale, Ramirez, and me. We ran. Branches tore at us. Roots tripped us. The ground slid under our boots, but we didn't stop. Not until we stumbled into another stream, the water cold and fast. Hale fell to his knees, gasping. Ramirez bent double, hands on his thighs, face pale with fear. The stream cut through a narrow gorge. Cliffs rose on either side, slick with moss. It felt like a trap, but it also felt like the only way out. We followed it. Hours, maybe. The moon hung high, silver through the mist. The sound of water drowned the silence. For a moment, just a moment, I thought maybe we'd lost it. Then came the roar. It rolled down the gorge like thunder. Branches snapped behind us, stones clattered from the cliffs. It was coming fast. We ran, splashing through the stream, rifles clutched tight. Ramirez tripped, went under, came up choking. Hale pulled him to his feet, shouting, "Move!" The gorge opened into a wide pool. On the far side, the trees thinned, and beyond them I saw the faint glow of campfires. Soldiers. A base. My heart leapt. We were close, but the roar shook the ground again, and then it stepped into the gorge behind us. The surviving giant, its chest heaved, fur matted with blood from our bullets. Its eyes burned amber, locked on us. It bared its teeth and came forward, each step shaking the water. We fired everything we had left. Rounds cracked, flashes lit the gorge, bullets tearing into its chest and arms. It staggered but didn't fall. It just kept coming. Hale shoved Ramirez and me toward the trees. "Go! Move! Get out!" "What about you?" I shouted. "Go!" he roared. Then he turned, pulled a grenade from his belt and charged. The blast lit the gorge like lightning. The sound slammed into me, knocking me down. When I looked back, Hale and the creature were both gone, the pool boiling with smoke and fire. Ramirez dragged me to my feet. We stumbled through the trees, half blind, lungs burning. And then we were out. The jungle opened, and we collapsed on the edge of another camp. Floodlights snapped on, blinding us. Soldiers rushed forward, rifles raised, shouts filling the air. I remember falling to my knees, hands shaking, the words spilling out of me. It's real. It's real. God help us. It's real. They didn't answer. They didn't comfort us. They didn't even look surprised. They just hauled us up, stripped our rifles away, and dragged us into a tent. Inside, officers sat with papers, typewriters, files stacked high. One of them slid a form across the table, pen waiting. "This is what you'll write," he said. His voice was flat, rehearsed. "Ambush, enemy action, casualties explained by collapse of terrain. Nothing else happened. Do you understand?" Ramirez laughed, a broken, bitter laugh. "You think anyone's gonna believe that?" The officer leaned forward, eyes cold. "They'll believe what we tell them to believe. And so will you." I stared at the paper, the lies already typed, the spaces left for our names. My hand shook as I picked up the pen. I thought of Hale, Murphy, O'Reilly, all the others swallowed by the valley. I thought of the roar, the eyes, the broken bodies left behind. And I signed. Because I wanted to live, because I had no choice. Ramirez signed too, but his eyes burned with hatred. I never saw him again after that night. They shipped us out within days, separated us, scattered us across different units. The valley was erased, the files destroyed or locked away. The men we lost, listed as missing. Their families never got the truth. And me? I carried it. Year after year, decade after decade. The memory of those screams, those eyes, that valley that swallowed men whole. I'm old now. My hands shake, my body weak. But the memory stays sharp. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear it again. The low rumble, the heavy step, the roar that shook the ground. The army buried the truth, but they didn't kill it. Nothing kills it. And if the valley still lives, if those creatures still walk, then one day someone else will stumble into their ground. And when they do, no amount of lies will cover what happens next. I've carried this story for nearly 80 years. Most days I wish I hadn't. It's a heavy thing, living with memories you can't speak about, memories that don't fit in any official record. The Army told us to forget, but how do you forget watching your brothers torn apart? How do you forget eyes that glowed in the dark, screams that split the night, a valley that seemed alive with something not of this world? I did what they told me. I signed the papers. I nodded when the officers said ambush. I sent letters home to families telling them their sons were heroes who fell in combat, not broken in the arms of giants. And then I lived a life. I married, raised kids, worked a quiet job, pretended I was just another old soldier with scars like the rest. But I never stopped hearing it. That roar, the weight of footsteps that shook the ground. I'd wake in the night, sweat cold on my neck, swearing I heard the cans rattle on the perimeter line. My wife would tell me it was just dreams, but I knew better. And then years later, long after the war ended, I heard whispers again. Not from soldiers this time, but from hunters, hikers, even locals who still dared to speak. Stories about missing people near the Koʻolau Range, strange footprints found by streams, a scream in the night that froze blood. The Army always had an explanation. Landslides, drownings, lost hikers. But I know what those people really saw. I know what took them. I've thought a lot about why the Army kept it quiet. Fear, maybe. Fear that the public couldn't handle the truth. Fear that they couldn't control it. Or maybe it was simpler. Maybe they wanted to keep it for themselves to study, to weaponize, to use. I'll never know. But I know this. The valley wasn't empty when we left. One of them was still alive. Wounded, yes, but alive. And if one lived, maybe more lived. Maybe the valley isn't just a hiding place. Maybe it's a nest. I wonder sometimes what Hale would say if he were still here. He was a good man, steady, strong. He believed in duty. He gave his life to buy us a chance. And for what? So a file could be stamped classified? So men in suits could pretend monsters don't exist? Ramirez. I don't even know if he made it home. They scattered us so far apart I never heard from him again. Sometimes I think he talked. that maybe he told someone and they made him disappear for it. He was never the type to stay quiet. Me? I've stayed silent because I wanted to live, because fear is a leash stronger than chains. But I don't have many years left. What can they do to me now? So I'm telling it, all of it, not for me, for the men who never came back, for their families who were handed folded flags and half-truths, and for anyone who still walks the ridges of Oahu, thinking the jungle is just jungle. It's not. I've heard people laugh at stories like this. Call them campfire tales. Call them Bigfoot nonsense. Let them laugh. They weren't there. They didn't see Murphy crushed like a doll. They didn't hear O'Reilly scream as he was carried into the dark. They didn't stand with blood on their hands and realize the enemy wasn't across the ocean. It was standing 10 feet tall in front of them. Sometimes when I watch the news, I catch myself wondering, wars never really end. They just move. The jungles of Vietnam, the mountains of Afghanistan, the deserts of Iraq, places where soldiers vanish, patrols go missing, and reports don't add up. Maybe it's just war being war. Or maybe there are valleys like Kahelelani all over the world, places the maps don't name, places the army won't talk about. I can't prove it. All I have are memories, a journal half-rotted from jungle damp, scars that don't show on the skin, and the sound of a scream that never fades. But I'll leave you with this. If you ever find yourself in the Hawaiian mountains and the jungle goes quiet and the air fills with that smell, that sharp, musky stink of wet fur and rot leaf, don't stop to wonder. Don't stop to look. Leave. Because what lives in that valley isn't meant to be seen. And once it sees you, it doesn't forget. I've spent a lifetime trying to forget, and I never have. So if one day the truth finally comes out, if the files are opened, if the bones are found, if the roar is heard again, remember the names of the men who went in first. Remember what we lost in the mist, and remember that sometimes the enemy isn't a man at all. You're still watching without subscribing? Make sure you don't miss the next story. Subscribe now and share with your friends. Tell us your country, the time you're watching, and any real-life incident like this, then post it in the comments.